You know, there was a book, George Friedman, the geopolitical analyst. He wrote a book in the early 2000s called The Next 100 Years, where he tried to sort of forecast what the world might look like in the year 2100. He began by talking about what the world looked like in the year 1900, and then he goes sort of decade by decade, how radically everything changed between, say, 1900 and 1930, or 1930 to 1950, and so on. And it's truly astonishing how many drastic paradigm shifts took place. Empires fell, empires rose, world wars, on and on. Really breathtaking global shifts. When you look at history that way, it's hard to wrap your head around how many changes can actually take place in a relatively short amount of time. Basically, within one person's lifetime, everything can change. You know, in 1900, like he says in his book, London was the center of the world. There was no communism, no Soviet Union. There was the Ottoman Empire, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and so on. The Americans mostly stayed on their side of the Atlantic. And it seemed like this is how things would just be, you know, indefinitely. But just a short 40 years or so later, everything changed. England was demolished in the World War. The Ottomans were gone. The Soviets emerged. Germany took over France, on and on. Really radical, unthinkable changes. Then if you go ahead a few more decades to the 1980s, again, it seems like a completely different world. And then on forward to the 2000s, it's remarkable. Everything changed. And when you think about that, when you think about how many huge paradigmatic pendulum swings there have been that have taken place and that do take place in just a matter of decades, it makes certain continuities even more astonishing. When you're able to maintain a constant amidst the radical changes that sweep over every other element of international relations, global power relationships, international relations, and so on, when you're able to actually keep something unchanged, it lets you know just how important, how paramount it is that this particular status quo remains intact, how important it is to those who are keeping it intact. And I'm talking now about the West's relationship with Africa, because the West's economic relationship with Africa has not fundamentally changed in over 800 years. This is absolutely stunning. If the drastic and rapid changes that can occur and have occurred within the West over just 1 or 2 decades, if that's breathtaking, well, what about the fact that nothing has changed between the West and Africa in basically a millennium? I mean, the relationship was ruthlessly extractive 800 years ago, and it's ruthlessly extractive now. And you can't help but recognize that keeping things this way simply must not only be important to the West, but literally it must be the most important thing to the West. It's so important to them that they have always maintained this status quo no matter what else changes in the world. Wallahi, they're dedicated to the subjugation and the exploitation of Africa more than they're dedicated to anything else. Everything else is allowed to change except for this. This must never change. And it's not difficult to see why. I mean, it's the subjugation and the exploitation of Africa that has enabled the West to impersonate a superior civilization. It's like a con man, you know, a drifter who tries to convince people that he's some sort of an aristocrat or a monarch or something. Well, he needs to have some kind of a display of a monarch's wealth in order to be convincing. And that's been the whole basis for what the West claims about itself being superior. The whole basis has always been that they're materially successful. So, okay, today you have iPhones and technology, you have a high standard of living and so forth. So that means that you must be better. You must be more intelligent. You must be more evolved. You must be more civilized, more advanced than the rest of us. I mean, look how nice their places are. See how much better their stuff is. Well, this is all reliant upon the vicious pillage and plunder of Africa. Without this subjugation, without this exploitation of Africa, Europe and the West would be nothing but crude, emaciated serfs, barely producing enough to survive. Their wealth was primarily derived from theft and plunder, from piracy and slavery, from mass murder and crime. This is just a historical reality. Because of the subjugation of Africa, first through chattel slavery, the extraction of Africa's human resources, and now through the extraction of natural resources, the West has been able to maintain this artificial, unearned status as a so-called civilization, keeping Africa subject subordinate, suppressed, and impoverished is an existential need for the West. It's the only way that they can keep up the pretense of their supremacy. Because again, the pretense of their supremacy has never been based upon any actual advancement, any actual sophistication, any actual moral or intellectual development. It has always been based on the violent accumulation of wealth and resources, upon brute power, deceit, and conniving. And Africa, the subjugation of Africa, is the most vital necessity for keeping this con going. I mean, right now, the trade relationship between the West and Africa is that something like 70% of exports to Africa from the West are manufactured goods, and imports from Africa are just the raw materials used to make those manufactured goods. So they're taking from Africa what is needed in order to produce goods that then Africa buys from the West, made with their own raw materials. And the West has done everything possible to try to impede Africa's ability to build its own manufacturing base so that they could potentially use their own raw materials, use their own raw minerals to produce their own goods. I mean, the whole process should be done in-house. It should all be done in Africa. That's what makes sense. You know, you have the materials, you have the minerals, you can make the products. That's how it should be. Rather than giving your raw natural resources to the West, for them to manufacture and refine and process and so on, Africa could do all of those things themselves. I mean, imagine the impact that would have. Where would that leave the West then? Well, they know that. The West knows that. They're acutely aware of their actual total dependence upon Africa. If Africa manufactured, if they used their own resources, their own minerals, their own materials for their own industries, well, the entire economy of the West would collapse. And with the collapse of their economy, their whole so-called civilization would collapse. Africa is the foundation upon which they built their house. So they know this. And like I said, this is why no matter what else changes in the world, no matter how power dynamics shift in the world, the subjugation of Africa has been maintained for over 800 years. There's literally nothing more important to them than this. And this is why there are very powerful factions in the West that want to destroy BRICS, and why they fearmonger about Chinese investment in Africa, and why America specifically is engaged in nonstop interference, covert operations, regime change, regime infiltration projects all across the continent. I mean, look at South Africa, the ANC, either out of naivete or corruption, or naivete that devolved into corruption, or out of coercion, or some combination of all of these factors, the ANC collaborated with neoliberal programs for 30 years. I mean, to one degree or another, for the last 30 years. But as global power dynamics have been shifting, and the creation and the ascendancy of BRICS has been taking place, people have started to have aspirations. And more importantly, they've started to have options. And those options have made their aspirations actually achievable. I'm talking about aspirations of political independence, aspirations of economic sovereignty, aspirations of getting out from under the yoke of the West. That's actually becoming achievable now. So the ANC was facing, and they are facing, severe criticism and opposition. They were being challenged, and they were being challenged by parties that do not accept neoliberalism, neoliberal colonialism, corporate colonization. And the US knew that eventually they were going to lose power. Eventually, the ANC was going to face the consequences of capitulation and collaboration, and they were going to be removed and replaced. And if the US didn't do something, then the replacement for the ANC was not going to be an obedient client. Because again, South Africa has the option now not to be an obedient client of the West. I mean, as long as there were no options, then it wasn't that risky for America. Even if the ANC lost popularity, no matter who replaced them, they would have no choice but to capitulate to neoliberalism because there was no options. But there are options now. So you have the United States then backing the so-called Democratic Alliance, the DA, which is an overtly neoliberal, Western-aligned, elitist political party of colonizer collaborators. So the unpopularity and the opposition to the ANC opened a space for the DA to move into the government in the last election. So now you have this so-called GNU, the Government of National Unity, which is nothing but a neoliberalism light and a neoliberalism hardcore. It's a coalition of one party that was aligned with the West, the ANC, aligned with the West out of coercion or naivete or corruption, but which could have potentially been influenced by anti-neoliberal populist sentiment if given a chance. Now, they've joined together with a party that is intensely committed to colonization, intensely committed to neoliberalism. I mean, they want to privatize everything. They want everything to be sold off to the private sector. They want to hollow out the government completely. And you need this radical neoliberal colonizer faction to be there, because as the new options have emerged, you've now had radical anti-neoliberal positions being advocated and becoming viable. I mean, you're actually having calls for the nationalization of industries rather than the privatization of state enterprises. Well, the West can't have that. So they need something like the DA, the Democratic Alliance, to move in to try to avert the threat of South Africa actually becoming politically independent and economically sovereign. You know, they call it the GNU, but the N shouldn't stand for national. It's the government of neoliberal unity. It's a coalition united against the people of South Africa, in my opinion, in service to the interests of the elite private sector of South Africa and to the global Western private sector. The DA is a racist, Zionist, anti-BRICS, pro-Western colonizer political party, funded at least in part by the National Endowment for Democracy in the United States, which is nothing but a wing of the CIA, whose sole mission is to advance American interests. So in South Africa, this was a regime infiltration project that was undertaken to actually avert regime change in South Africa, organic regime change. Because look, you can nationalize the mining sector in South Africa. You can. You can nationalize the banking sector. You can nationalize the Reserve Bank. You can do all of these things and everyone knows it. It's not some kind of a mystery that these types of measures would be immensely empowering for South Africa. These aren't measures that we don't know whether they're useful and beneficial or not. Obviously they are, and tremendously so. And that's precisely why these types of policies, these types of measures have to be subverted. I mean, it's absolutely ludicrous for anyone in South Africa today to advocate neoliberal policies when we have in front of our eyes the catastrophic failure of those policies. I mean, nearly half the population is unemployed, over half the population among the youth. 75% of South Africans earn just the equivalent of $350 a month or less. In fact, roughly half of the population earn only $75 a month. And you're still going to advocate for the policies that got you here? No, obviously, if you nationalize, it's better for you. Obviously. I mean, empower the government with those abundant resources instead of letting foreign companies seize those profits and transfer them out of the country. I mean, if those revenues are going to the state, then the government will have the resources they need to better address the needs of the society. They can invest in SMEs, they can provide education, skills training, and so on, fund R&D. I mean, it's a no-brainer, but you're scared of what the West will do. They tell you that if you nationalize, then there will be massive capital flight, investors will run away, and so on. Well, think about that for a second. They're trying to scare you with consequences that they themselves will be imposing. They're warning you that if you do something that is in your country's best interest, they will punish you. This is very different from telling you that the policy in and of itself is actually bad. They're telling you that they will make it a bad policy because of what they will do to you if you implement it. You understand? These people are threatening you, and then you're supposed to trust their advice? The advice of these neoliberal predators? You're supposed to listen to them and trust their advice when they are blatantly telling you that they will punish you if you do something to try to make things better, to try to change things? I mean, they couldn't make it more obvious, their malice. They couldn't make their malice more obvious. They couldn't make it any more obvious how against your best interests they are, how much they put their own private interests above the interests of their country. They're openly identifying themselves to you as your enemy. You understand me? I mean, they're not saying that nationalization doesn't work. They're not saying that it isn't beneficial. They're saying that they will do everything in their power to make sure it doesn't work. They're saying that they will sabotage nationalization for their own sake, for the sake of their own profit interests. And still you let this type of people have a say in policy discourse? Well, that's humiliating. They hold you in contempt and they don't even hide it. I'm telling you, everyone knows what should be done in a country like South Africa, what kind of economic policies they should implement. And it's the same thing that many global South countries should do. Everyone knows the obvious economic benefits of these types of policies. And everyone knows that the only reason that you don't implement these policies is because parasitic, predatory, Western colonizing private sector powers will try to punish you if you do. I mean, for instance, the nationalization of key sectors in South Africa or in any other country, such as mining, such as energy and finance. This is essential to try to break the stranglehold of foreign capital on your country, and to ensure that the country's resources are actually used for the benefit of the people and for the benefit of the domestic economy. Land reform, the question of land reform in South Africa is critical. This is a critical issue. There should be a comprehensive land reform program in South Africa that prioritizes the redistribution of land to the historically disadvantaged. This is basic, and it's incredibly obvious. And once you've boosted the state's resources through nationalization, there should be a comprehensive social welfare system that provides for the basic needs of all citizens, including healthcare, education, and housing. This is, again, obvious. And finally, the government, of course, needs to pursue a policy of industrialization and job creation, a policy that prioritizes the development of the domestic economy. And like I said before, prioritizes the manufacturing of goods from their own raw materials, from their own raw minerals and their resources, rather than the export of those minerals to Western companies for them to use in their manufacturing. Honestly, none of this requires any particular brilliance to understand. These aren't radical policies, but they're only made to seem radical, and they're treated as radical because everyone is living in fear of private sector tyrants who completely control the discourse. So you're not allowed to talk about anything that isn't basically a policy genuflection to shareholders and to Western supremacy. But everyone knows that these are good policies that would help South Africa, and that the only reason anyone would think that they might not be good for South Africa is because they know that doing a policy that's good for South Africa would prompt a hostile, retaliatory response from the West. Well, like I said, that should show you what kind of a friend the West is. But look, South Africa and all the countries in Africa, all the countries in the global South, in fact, they're in a position today to actually dictate the terms now. If Westerners want to pull out their capital, so say you nationalize, okay, if Westerners want to pull out their capital, they want to withdraw their investments, okay, go ahead. Dig around in your own lands for the minerals you need to make your stuff, and good luck to you. I mean, we have other investors anyway who can take your place. There's other companies that we can partner with. You're not the only ones. So the only question really is, how much are you interested in boosting the economies of China, the economy of Russia, the economy of the Gulf? How much do you want to see the BRICS countries surpass you economically? You know, BRICS already accounts for more of global GDP than the G7. So if you want to pull out your investments, you pull them out. Go ahead. You can only harm yourselves. No. South Africa and the Muslim world and all the global South countries, it's time for them to break away from this paradigm, break away from Western domination, and start implementing all of those policies that they know perfectly well will benefit them, whether America likes it or not. I mean, can you imagine if the Gulf countries didn't put their oil sector under government control? Where would they be now? But look at where they are now. Look at the amount of capital they have now. While South Africa could have and should have a comparably massive sovereign wealth fund. There's no reason for them not to. No, this millennium-long system of subjugation needs to come to an end. And it really doesn't matter if the road to liberation is a little bit rocky. I'd rather be traversing a rocky road than be buried under the rubble, which is where the West has kept Africa for centuries. This is the richest and most important continent on the planet. And the West stole your riches, and they stole your importance, and they've been an imposter on the throne for far too long. It doesn't make any sense to be afraid of someone whose power is actually dependent upon you. That's a psychological power, not an actual power. They have a psychological power over you. But every element of their real power is completely derived from you yourselves. It's like your hand is on the tap that the hose is attached to that they use to waterboard you. And all you have to do is turn it off.
Now, the former president of France, François Mitterrand, in 1957 predicted that without Africa, France would not have any position in the 21st century. And this seems to be echoed by what's going on right now. Look at even the Paris Games, Olympic Games that are going on. You will note that most of the participants from France are naturalized citizens who are Black And therefore, it's basically people who migrated from Africa and moved to France to seek for greener pastures. Let that aside, you've seen that the growing discontent of African leaders for Western.
But everyone has a different story to tell. But everyone has a different story to tell. Shell, which says it's losing it.
The Tampa market.
In Northeast Africa, precisely on the horn of Africa.
All right, good afternoon, folks. Once again, this is Frank. I am your host. This is the Revolutionary Repatriation Educational Lecture Series aspect of WCC every Sunday at 1 p.m., where we come to church and get the real gospel. Yes, I said the real gospel, right? Yeah, so today's topic, it says British, England, the British recruiting army in ECOWAS nations. England is recruiting army, her World War 3. All right, she's depending on Africa to fight her World War 3. NATO is depending on Africa, on the West African nations to fight her World War 3. So as we speak, England is on the African continent right now recruiting soldiers in the West African nations, ECOWAS, the Economic Community of West Africa, right? State. So British recruiting army in ECOWAS nations for World War 3. And that is N, it was a mistake, it's not ABD, it's AND, and would recolonize and enslave African. Now, this process is going to recolonize. This process is going to enslave, re-enslave African. Now, let me explain that a little bit. Because the first enslavement of African took place through the Atlantic Ocean. Are you getting me now, right? Took place through the Atlantic Ocean, where African people were taken and through slave, let's say through shipped to the so-called Western War or to the so-called New War, right? Now, with this new colonization process, it's not going to take or the Atlantic Ocean. You won't be transported through the Atlantic Ocean, right? And this time around, you are not going to be kidnapped. This time around, Africans are not going to be kidnapped. African will use the air. African will have first class. Now, I'm not saying this to encourage any one of you. We're going to dive into it, but I'm just telling you how you're going to go. You that want to go is up to you. Because this enslavement, right? This enslavement is different from our forefather. This enslavement going to be like they're going to treat you like a first class, right? But it's a quasi first class. Just because they want to get you out of Africa to go and fight their war, they're going to give you that first class. So they're going to prepare everything for you, your documentation, your passport, everything. And then, they're going to pick you out, right? plane ticket, everything going to be purchased. Boom, to the airport. Boom, England. Boom, to the base. Boom, you live there until World War III start. And as we speak, World War III already started. It has begun already, right? World War III is going on. But because you have these savage media, mainstream media, they are not coming to tell you that World War III is actually ongoing right now. So they are now going to Africa recruiting, but we're going to get into the African situation. All right, we're going to get into it now. Recently, right, for the past few months, I think we spoke about it. The United States, as I did my research, is not yet in Africa. It's not yet in Africa. Now, the United States went to Africa during the colonization period. When she saw her counterpart, the people that took part in slavery, when she saw that those people were already in Africa, that's how the United States went there too. But before 1822, that was the time the United States went there. Before 1822, France, the colonizer, was there. England was there. Germany was there. Portugal was there. Belgium was there. I mean, all those barbaric, nations, Western nations that took part in enslavement of Africans, they were already there. The 1884 Berlin Conference was not the time Europeans went to Africa. That was not the time they divided Africa. Africa was already divided before 1884. Africa was already divided before 1822. Because by the time America got there, these colonizers was already there. In only places up to current time that they call, former colony. Okay? Now, the only reason why the United States got a place, or the U.S. got a place today, Liberia, at that time, they have not yet drawn demarcation like Bolos. They have not yet drawn it. So the 1884 Berlin Conference was just a time period that they decided, okay, now that we have Africa, now that we have mapped Africa, let's go back to Germany. Let's go back to Europe, all right, and advise ourselves and talk to ourselves. The only way we will succeed in Africa is for us not to fight among ourselves, because those land, the land are not for us. The resources are not for us. So the only way we can explore Africa, the only way we can defeat Africa is for us to be united as we go down there. So as we go, we have to draw demarcation so that the French will know the British control this place, because the French will no longer come to claim land, and the British will no longer go to claim land to where the French are. So let us respect each other. Be to your side, I be to my side, the Belgian to their side, the German to their side, the Portuguese to their side, the English to their side, right? And America to her side. The 1884 Berlin Conference, America was in Germany. There was representative sitting there representing America. So they were all in our 1884 Berlin Conference. That was the only reason that when they met to tell each other, don't come to my terrain, let us respect each other. If you want to get some resources, talk to me nicely, I will give it to you. But we cannot fight on that land that is not ours, for resources that are not ours. So let us remain united. That was the reason they divided Africa, so that if the British come to the French, they will know that this part is the French territory, because the French army is going to be there. And throughout, after they divided Africa, Their army was there. So the army we see in Africa, Western army we see in Africa, is not today thing. But it's just like today, our so-called leader agreed to it. Before then, there was no one stood up to them. They went there. But today, our leaders bring them in and say, you guys come. But that was one reason, okay, that they were able to overcome the African continent. It's not like our kings and queens did not fight. They fought. They fought. But equally so again, we have some kings who compromise the interests of the people. And they collab with the West. And they went against other kings. And even in today, we can see that. Tinubu is an example of that time period that other kings went against other kings in the interest of the West. Nana Akufo-Addo is an example. So when you hear people saying all Africans saw other Africans, it happened today. It's not like African went, oh, this is a slave market. These are black people. All right? No, that's not happening. But the fact is, some of those kings, all right, just how we see today, Nana Akufo-Addo went to the U.S. and told the U.S. to go Burkina Faso, all right, and invade Burkina Faso, all right, came to the U.S., told the U.S. that they should go, all right, and scrutinize Burkina Faso and kill Abraham Traoré. It was the same things that happened back then. It was the same thing that happened back then. So when you hear Kwame Nkrumah talking about neocolonialism, he saw it from there. He saw it from there. It was from there. He saw those things. So neocolonialism, while colonialism was going on, right? We have people in a system, even from slavery, we have those people that was there. So Tinubu, Nana Akufo-Addo, or Alassane, Macky Sall, or William Ruto, all those people are the kings of our time. All those people are the kings of our time. And that's how during that time, they have kings who were like that. They have leaders who were like that. So our time today, those are the kings who are going against African interests for the interests of the West. We're going to come to that. Let me not get off topic. We were deep into that, deeper and deeper. Because what is about to happen or what is going on is a recolonization and a re-enslavement of Africans, because they are going to take our manpower, just how doing colonization, right, or the enslavement time, right? They wipe the African population from the African continent. They took the manpower and they left the African continent empty and defenseless, that could no longer defend herself. This is the same thing that is about to happen again, and our leaders are setting them quietly because they have failed the continent before and they are still failing the continent. Now, when World War III comes, Africa no longer going to have the youth. Africa no longer going to have the manpower to defend herself. And indeed, it's coming. World War III is here. There is nothing sugarcoating, no sugarcoating about it. If you think the West just going to go down, if you think they're going to go down just like that, you get it wrong. If you think the colonizer just going to go down like that, you get it wrong. If you think they will go down, the imperialists, the oppressor will go down just like that, they will just sit and say, okay, you know what? We have ruled the continent or the earth or the world for 800 years, for 700 years, for 900 years. Now it's our time that we give up. Somebody got to pick up, or it is time that Africa need to pick up. If you think that's not going to happen, you'll be daydreaming. You will be daydreaming. They are not going to give up. They will fight, and whatsoever come as the result, let it be. but they will not go down like that. And in that, get prepared for World War III. Because the African continent will have no manpower. They will have no manpower. Now, can I stop youth? Can I stop the Africans from going to join the British military? Absolutely not. I can. I can. Because I have no incentive to give to them not to go. I have no incentive. I have no support to give them. But the only support I can give them is to bring out what might happen to them. Or if I not might, what is going to happen to them. Because we saw in World War II, didn't African fight for England? What then happened with all the promises? Nothing. They called them immigrants, they deported them back. Didn't Africans, the French colony, the African, didn't they fight for France? What happened with all the promises? They deported them back, and then they put them on a camp. They took their arm from them, and then when they opened fire on them, they killed them. What happened to the Africans that fought for the United States? The same thing. They deported them back, they called them names, and they disarmed them, and they never gave them anything. Yes, it happened. So we will just remind them, we can stop it. I can stop it. And people are still going to go, by the way. It's still going to happen, regardless what. Why? Because we have those dumb, empty-headed African leaders, some on a continent, who are not given the opportunity. So the man that is there, the youth that is there, he know that, okay, I'm already dead. What is the significance of me living in Africa? If I can go, even if I can live for 10 years, but within that 10 years, I can make my name. I can become someone. I can take my family from poverty. After all, I'm still going to die. All those things will come to someone's mind because of the kind of bad leadership, corrupt leadership, okay, we have on the African continent. Look at Abraham Tuwari fighting for the right thing. But in doing that, it is the African leaders who are hating these men, who are hating these little men here. Because those corrupt leaders, if they see Burkina Faso succeed, if they see Mali succeed, if they see Niger succeed, those African leaders will be put to shame by their own people. So, folks, sometimes not everyone that hates you mean that you are doing the wrong thing. Sometimes some people hate you because you are doing the right thing. And that right thing that you are doing, it will shine light on them that, look, you've been here. You've been doing this. You all as you are. Look at this young man. Look at what he did. Without no Western support. Without no Western aid. But see where he took his country. See, he took his resources. He naturalized his resources. He gave the resources to the state. He took it from private company and gave it to the government. But see how it is being used. And by the fact, let's do this. There is no country in Africa that has survived and all that will survive by Western influence, okay? By outside company, okay? By you having free trade. No African nation have and will survive. But if you look at the history of Africa, nations who have naturalized the resources given to the state, they have citizens have benefited. My book, how they call it, Libya is a typical example. What Muammar Gaddafi did, Muammar Gaddafi gave the resources to the state, and citizens benefited from it. Libya under Gaddafi was even better than most of the Western world, most of the so-called Western world. Libya under Gaddafi in a typical Africa, because the resources, the state own it. That's the only way, and the citizens benefited from it. as compared to the American democracy that is there today. So that's the only thing we can do to give you the whole scenario, how you're going to play out, because you're just going to die. You're going to die for no cause. And at the end, if they succeed, they deport your ass back. Sorry to say this, but they will deport you back. And if not, before they deport you, they might kill some of you people, like how they did it to the African that fought for the French. The British, the African that fought for the British. The African that fought for the US. World War II. Well, let's get into this. Hey, Kuma, you can come on. You can come on anytime. All right, so let's get into the first article here and see what we're talking about here, okay? Okay, this is not a one-on-one. All right, this is not what I want. Sorry, folks, hold on. I keep bringing out the wrong article. Okay. All right. So this is the first article right here. As you can see here, it says British Army recruitment 2024 to 2025 online application process. Now, on top here, you see here recruitment activities. And then you see vacancy news in Africa. Did you see right there? All right. So first of all, look here, British Army recruitment 2024 to 2025 online application process. And then here I say recruitment activities, vacancy news in Africa, vacancy news in Africa. Now, first of all, what comes to your mind here is, why would they go to the African continent to recruit? Oh, I thought they said they don't want immigrants. I thought they said Africans are nothing. So why they always use Africans to rescue them? Why they always use Africans to do their dirty work? And then after they have succeeded, then they take African as nothing. But I don't blame them. For those of you that watch the preview of this show, the first video that we show, this is what these people do. They work in their interest. But let's continue here. Let's see here. So first of all, they put an African here, barman protecting, the British land, right? Protecting the colonizer land. And then you and in Africa, you see this now. You said, damn, I want to be like this. So the British Army recruitment process, or recruitment 2024 to 2025 has begun. And the application portrayal, www whatsoever, right? Let's go down a little bit. So you see right here, let's say in this regard, if you are an African, whether from Kenya, if you are an African, whether from Kenya, it doesn't matter. Whether from Nigeria, it doesn't matter. Whether from Ghana, it doesn't matter. Whether from Tanzania, it doesn't matter. As long as you are a British colony, as long as you are a British territory. Now, let me use the word maybe somebody want to hear. Because somebody may say, oh, are these countries still British territory? Are these countries still, how do you call it, honor of Great Britain? Are they still colony? Let me use the language you want to hear, all right? As long you are a former colony, let me use the language. Because as far as I'm concerned, we are not former, all right? But I will use the word you want me to use. As long as you are a former British colony, you are qualified to join the British Army to go and fight for them. All right? But as long as you are a former British colony, if you don't want to join the army, you are not qualified to go to England. You are alien. You are Marquis. You are Japanese. You are all the horrible names that they can call you with. You are stinking Africans. You are poor. I mean, all the horrible names that they can call you with, you are not qualified. You are not useful. Therefore, they are not talking about you. Let's continue here. Let's go down a little bit. Let's go down a little bit so we can see more of this. Okay? Let's go down a little bit so we can see more of this. Because I do not, look, I don't blame these people. Although I'm saying this, right? I'm reading this. Look, these people will do what they need to do. This entire war is a war of survival. What can you do to survive? What can you do to keep yourself at that stage where you are? Look, it's a survival world that we live in. So I don't blame these people, but I'm only reacting to the obvious, because if not for the kind of leaders we have on the African continent, these things will not be happening. Because before this happened, these people will think twice before they even put this rubbish on the internet. But they know our circumstances. They know our demise in Africa. So they know Africans will go for this. They know Africans will put the application online. Because they know there are Africans who just want to leave the continent. Because we have bad leadership. It's not that the continent is poor. No. Because the entire world feed in a pot of Africa. The entire world, the United States feed in a pot of Africa. UK, I mean EU, they all feed in a pot of Africa. All of them, they feed in a pot of Africa. So they all depends on Africa. So if our African leaders were doing the right thing, absolutely, even if this rubbish is being put on the internet, no Africans in their right mind will want to live their good life, their great life, to go and die for UK than to die for the African continent. But as I can speak to you now, there are Africans who are saying, I'd rather go and die for the UK than to die for this stinking African continent. And I don't blame them in what they say in their opinion. I don't blame them, because again, it's based on these kind of leader we have on the African continent. I don't blame them. Absolutely, I don't blame them. It is the cause of our leaders that these things are happening. Because instead of the useful continent, okay, fight for itself, her people, her children will leave to go and fight for the oppressor. And then after they have finished fighting for the oppressor and the oppressor win, then the oppressor come back to the African continent to oppress and subjugate the African continent, when her children were the one who went to secure the empire of the oppressor. Why? Because we have bad governance or leadership on the African continent who don't care for the people they serve. So I don't blame these people. These people do what they do to survive, to keep themselves. Because no matter what it is, World War III is coming as we speak currently. Like last week, we spoke about it. Do you think it was Ukrainian army? Those who are NATO. Okay, I want to believe those who are NATO fighting in Africa that fought alongside with the terrorists. It's not the first time. After all, the United States fought alongside with the Arab Spring, the terrorists, to go and destroy Libya. Is it the first time? For others to say, oh, it was Ukraine. No, it was NATO. I believe it was NATO that did that. Because Macron is out. Their military out. U.S. military out. You think it was just Ukraine? But yes, they said it was Ukraine. But I want to believe the West, the colonizer, the imperialists, this NATO nation, it's not the first time. They support the terrorist activities on the African continent. So it won't be surprising. So let's see something here. Let's see right here. So they say it's British Army for Commonwealth country only. It's British Army for Commonwealth country only. I guess you might have come across this controversial question, and it is one of the impediments to why more Africans refuse to apply for British Army recruitment. Look at this. Tell me. And then they said, so they try to make it clear. They say, oh, Africans, we know, and you know, some of you might refuse because you think it is only applied to British citizens, not African, right? But look, of no doubt, UK Army recruitment is open to applicants from Commonwealth countries. Again, the former colony. Because most of these countries, when they were getting independent, so-called independent, they joined the Commonwealth. They joined the Commonwealth. That's where the Commonwealth came from. Oh, okay. Say African, you guys are dependent, are getting independent, right? Okay, no problem. We can give it to you people. We accept. But listen, that form of Commonwealth, because without these African nations, there will be no Commonwealth. This is where these things came from. All right, don't leave us. Stay with us. Let us be the court. Okay, let us be friends. Let us create something called Commonwealth of Nations. This is where these things came from. So instead of you leaving us, no, don't leave. Be with us. Let us be friends. So as long as you are from this Commonwealth of Nations, you can join the UK Army. But apart from the army, you can't go there. They don't count you. They don't note you. So they said, of no doubt, UK Army recruitment is open to applicants from Commonwealth countries. But there are other countries that can also apply alongside. Now, some of these countries, right, they got Australia. As for that, it's their business. They got India. They got Canada. I mean, it's also so of them. It's still the oppressor. It's also of them. Now, they got Kenya here. They got Fiji here. They got Nigeria, right? But there are more to that. There are more to that, and they say, etc. There are more to that. So currently, they are recruiting on the African continent. While Africa is there, these so-called leaders, they are there begging for money, begging for pocket change, and not uniting the African continent to get prepared for the tax ahead. So Africa is going to be recolonized again, folks. Because if you think this World War III that is coming is going to be between just Europe, like how World War I and World War II, their tribal war was like, right? No. Those World War I, those things you call World War I and World War II, they were tribal war. The real World War III, the real World War III, and I call World War I, is about to come. Because when we have a conflict in Africa, it's not called World War. It's called African conflicts. It's called civil war. It's called tribal war. So what you call World War I, World War II, they were European conflicts. They were European tribal war. Misunderstanding between them. But this one that is about to come, it is the true war. That you call World War III, it is actually the true World War I that is about to happen. Because everything is just going to be between the how they call it, the NATO nations and Russia. You get it wrong. Because as we speak, these NATO nations are already in Africa fighting Africans. They join with the terrorists to fight Africans already. So everything, the war is going to be between NATO and Russia. You get it wrong. You get it wrong. If you can only understand what is going on, all right? Well, they are testing. And as we speak, nations today are finding way to ally. Because one nation, the war that is coming, one nation is not going to fight to win. You will not win. The war that is about to come, one nation is not going to win. Because nations are uniting, nations are collaborating, nations are working, nations are trying to seek partners who they can partner with, who they can understand to fight this war that is about to come. It is under the African continent. The European war, they have already sorted out their differences. They are already sorted out. They already figured out. It starts today. They already figured out. And that is why the only thing that left is the manpower. That is why they are recruiting. That is why you saw the United States pass a law, even though the selective service have been there, but it have now been forced. But now they passed a law that if you don't register for the selective service at the age of between 16, let's say 18 to 25, if you don't register, it's a felony. It's a crime. Why do you think they're doing those things? They have found out that they are united, but they do not have the manpower. Because victory comes through power too. Victory comes through population. Why do you think these people are against the African continent being populated? Why do you think they are against it? Why do you think they are against it? So they are already united. They have come together. So they are now recruiting. So the US need to have certain number of army. British need to have certain number of army. Canada need to have certain number of army. Okay? Germany need to have certain number of army. All right? And these people don't have the population. So once again, they look at just how doing slavery time, right? They need agriculture. Right? They need an economic boom. What did they do? They went to Africa for manpower. It is the same thing going on now again when they never had it. It is the same thing going on. They do not have the manpower and they have to come out with certain figures. Everything that is going on, these people have had meeting. They have had meeting and they say, okay, UK, you need to produce this amount. We don't know where you're going to get it from, but you need to have this amount. America, you need to have this amount. Germany, you need to have this amount. Canada, you need to have this amount. That is what's going on right now. So England has said, okay, let me go to my colony, let me go to my territory and recruit. These were prepared for World War III. And even with the Middle East, look, they have put their differences aside. They have seen that the European, the colonizers of the West, how they have united and how they are preparing. So the Middle East as well are preparing. They are putting their differences aside and they are working together, making sure they can get their army, and not just their army, but their arsenals. They are getting their scientists, putting their app and things together. I mean, everywhere. Everywhere. Yesterday, even North Korea and South Korea, those are just two people. But again, the West went and divided them. But as I looked yesterday while doing some research, South Korea is not saying, I mean, there was mass protest. They do not want the U.S. Army in South Korea. They don't want it because they know the ramification and they know what is about to happen. Because you cannot be fighting your enemy, then you have your enemy have a base. Does that make sense? You fighting your enemy, then your enemy have a base in your backyard. Does it make sense? And they are saying, no, the U.S. Army, we don't want it. The U.S. base, we don't want it. There was mass protest yesterday in South Korea. They said, no, North Korea, we are the same. The difference is we are called South and one is called North. But before it became South and North, we were Korean. We have the same identity. We eat the same food, the same culture. I mean, everywhere it is Une Africa. Again, Une Africa, we always have this divide and conquer mentality. Always. Always. You sat under the United States went and killed and assassinated a president. And you did nothing about it. But you will still come to the so-called UN and mention nothing. And then all you want is, we need to have seat in the US. You're going to have seat, permanency in the US before you can bring about the atrocity of the US by killing an African leader. Can you leave from Africa and kill any NATO leader? Can you do that? Can you do that? You just get up with an African army, get in plane and go to NATO and bombard any African leader and kill them. And then go back to Africa and then say, we went, we saw, we killed, and we loot. Can you do that? But all you do, you come to the UN, we want permanent seat. We want permanent this. Minus permanency plus permanency, Africa can survive without being part of the UN. Because the UN is even part of the demise of the African continent. Look at it in DRC Congo, looting the resources. The UN is in DRC Congo. These are the same people that fought a proxy war. The UN is just a name. But who controls the UN? Who is behind the UN? The same people that do not want to see Africa rise, that are the same people. UN is just a name. It's just letters. These are just letters. But the human being, the attitude and behavior does not carry the name UN, does not portray the name UN, does not define the name UN. It's just a name on paper, on pen. That's it. So what is the important? Wasting your time? Coming to give speeches? We need to be part of, we need to have permanent seat? Is that how you asking for? To just have permanent seat? But there is more. Look right here. Look right here. Commonwealth country eligible to apply. African countries eligible to apply. And non-African country eligible to apply. And these are all black people, by the way. These are all black people. Look here. All right. Bahama. Look at the Bahama. British territory. All right. The Bahama, Bangladesh, Barbados, okay, Belize, I don't know if it's Brazil, but Brunei, Dar es Salaam, Malta, Mauritius, Mozambique, Namibia, okay, and then you got Rwanda, you got Sierra Leone, you got Nigeria, South Africa part of their homeland. You got Cameroon. You got Canada. Okay? You got Canada. And by the way, Cameroon is divided into two parts. One side is French and one side is English. And before them, it was actually a German colony. It was never a French colony versus an English colony. No, it was totally a German colony. But in 1916, the English and the French, they wanted a certain part of Cameroon. Again, the resources. Okay? But at that time, again, they just came from, how they call it? At that time, we're talking about Jackie from World War I, right? And then in between World War II or so. They never liked Germany. They never liked Germany because of Adolf Hitler. They never liked Germany. So what happened here in 1916? The French and the English went together. They united. And then when they fought the German, they defeated the German left. And that's how today you have one side of Cameroon English, one side Cameroon French. So when you see the German or the English going to Cameroon, it's now holistically a French colony. Part is for England too. So that's why you see them there recruiting. Okay? Now, Ghana. Oh, my beloved Ghana. My beloved Ghana. Okay? Oh, sorry. Ghana is right here. Ghana, Grenada. But my beloved Ghana is here. Guyana. Okay? I'm just calling the black nation. Guyana, Jamaica, and Kenya. Letuso, okay, that one is in South Africa, we're on our side again as well. That's their home. Malawi. Okay, so as you can see, right? Those are the countries. Those are the countries where the citizens can just apply. Like now, this application, you don't have to travel to England. You sit right in Africa in your bedroom and do the application. And then they come and pick it out, do all your paperwork, send your passport, everything, they pick it out. Now, do I blame again Africans who are going there doing it? I don't blame them. I don't. To be frank, I don't blame them. I blame the African leaders because they create the problem, they create the hardship. If they can work with the West against the interests of Africans, why not? If they can work with the West against the interests of Africans, why not these people do it? Look at William Ruto, who went and sat down to the World Bank. The World Bank dictated to him how to take taxes from Africans so that the same money William Ruto borrowed that have no meaningful impact on the life of Kenya, that William Ruto took and brought it back and gave it to the West. World Bank now is telling William Ruto, you need to go and tax your people even on bread, so that this loan that we gave you, you can give it to us back. Meanwhile, the loan they gave William Ruto, that same money came back to the World Bank, and the World Bank took that same money and loaned it to another African leader. And in William Ruto's mind, he has money sitting in the bank, of course. And then now World Bank charge the citizen of Kenya through William Ruto. Do you see? So if they can do that, why the people can go and do what they're supposed to do to better themselves? Why? Because these leaders do not have the interest of Africans. Do you think if France is to go today and say we want to recruit in Africa, and these are the countries, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, or Chad, do you think the citizens in our region will ever do it? No, because they know that the Sahel region or the AES leaders have their interest and they are working for their interest and they are putting things in place so they will never leave, because they have better day ahead and they prefer to stay in Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, and to fight for the AES nation. If they would die, they would die for a cause. because those leaders are doing the right thing. But again, it is Tinubu, Nana Akufo-Addo, William Ruto who are going against those leaders. The kings of slavery, those are the kings of our generation that we have who betrayed the African continent during that time. These are the same kings we have today who are betrayed in the cause of Africans. They are the kings today. So I'm not going to sit down here and say, why England recruiting people? For what? For what? These people are doing what is in their best interest. Am I against their best interest? Absolutely not. I'm not against their best interest. What is our interest? What is our best interest? For me, that's what I'm discussing here. That's what I'm discussing here and bringing it to light. But I'm just warning those that will apply to go, because you are going to die for nothing. And even if you live, you have no package. They will deport you. And if they don't deport you, some of you that will live, they will kill you. Go and do history and see what they did to the African that fought for the French. Go and do history and see what they did for the African that fought for the so-called British. Go and do history and see for the African that fought for the US. World War II. Go and do your history. They are there. These things are there. That's the only benefit I can give you. And tell you, it's better you stay there and survive. If you die, die. Because at the end of the day, you will go what you think you are going for. It will still be meaningless. Meaningless. But I am not angry with the citizens. My anger is coming from the so-called leaders of Africa. That's where my anger, that's where my frustrations is coming from. I'm not angry for those that are going to apply. I'm not angry at them. I'm not. I'm not even not angry with the West. I'm not angry at them. Let's see another thing here. The only thing I can tell them, do not go and fight a war that is not yours. Don't do it. Don't fight a war that is not yours, that you have no business with. Because going to fight a war that is not yours, that you have no business with, is actually against your own interest. Just how Nana Akufo-Addo is going against the interests of Africa, his own interest, just like William Ruto, just like Tinubu, who are going against their own interests in Africa. That's the same thing will be applied to you. You'll be going against your own interest. And then look here. Here, they said nationality. Look here again. This is just another article. All right. So as you can see here, this is the Nigeria one. So this is the Nigeria one. So as you can see, Nigeria recruitment process. So people in Nigeria, this thing is serious, folks. World War II is on the rise. Don't take it to be fun. It is only Africans who are sitting and doing nothing and thinking nothing and applying nothing. But rather, they are going against other Africans, wasting their time, their energy against other African nations who are doing the right thing, who are fighting for the right thing. Instead of them going with those Africans and say, you know what, let us strengthen our men. Look at the Malian, look at the Burkinabe, look at the Nigerian, what they have done over the course of the years to strengthen their army. Today, they are using a drone to fight terrorists. Like I was watching yesterday, see what Abraham Traore did to the terrorists. But no, this is Nigeria. Because the population of Nigeria is supposed to stay in Nigeria to fight for Nigeria. But no, because of bad leadership, these folks, re-enslavement, again, 360. We are back again. So Nigeria recruitment process are portrayed, right? 2024. British Army recruitment 2024 to 2025 application, portrayed and recruitment. The British Army is the principal land welfare force for the United Kingdom, not Africa, for the United Kingdom, responsible for defending the nation interest, responsible for defending white supremacy interest, defending Western interests, not Africans, not Africa. Now, let's go down here and see. Let's go down here. Nationality. Now, as you can see here, it says nationality. Applicant must be a British citizen. That's one criteria. Applicant must be a Commonwealth citizen. That means those nations that we just called, for example, Ghana, or Tanzania, Nigeria, or Malawi, those things, right? Commonwealth, as long as you are part of that Commonwealth, or a foreigner or a foreign national with with indefinite leave to remain in the UK. Now, this with indefinite leave to remain in the UK, that means you are not in the UK yet, right? But if you are not part of the Commonwealth of Nations, you are for different countries, like let's say Liberia, right? Because Liberia is not under the Commonwealth of the England, but Liberia is under the Commonwealth of the US. Okay? For typical example, for clarity. Now, they can recruit you. That's what they said, from other nations, apart from the Commonwealth. So, they can recruit you, but you should be willing to live in the UK indefinite. Don't leave. You're not leaving. You live there. Now, the difference here is, with the Commonwealth of Nations, what might happen here is, you will go to England and do the training. Or, since they already have bases in the so-called African nations, if you join, for example, the UK military, for example, in Nigeria, they will recruit you from there. They will recruit you from there and take you straight to the base in Nigeria, because the UK already have bases there. And that's where you will be, and they will train you. You don't have to go to England. You don't have to go to England. But if you are a Liberian, for example, England does not have base or in Liberia. The US have a base there. Okay? So they might take you from there to England, where you will live there. So after your training, you're going to be in England. You will live there. So that's what I said, or a foreign national with indefinite leave to remain in the UK. So the Commonwealth nation, they might not fly you straight to England. They will just take you to the base in Nigeria, because England have base there. Okay? And there where you will be, and they will train you. And after they train you, they might take you to the UK, because they want you guys to the climatic condition, the weather, and also World War 3, right? It might be snowing. You might get used to the snow. You might get used to how you cover yourself, to how yourself, those things. Like, get used to the tactics on our side. Okay? So that's why they will carry you there to go and learn the skills on our side. Be used to the field. Let's just say the field. Be used to the field before the tournament starts. Before the 45 minutes start, the whistle start for for you to go. But other than that, they will train you in Nigeria. They will train you in Ghana. because the British have military base there. They will train you there. Even the US have base there too. So there's what's going on. So if England can start it, pretty soon the US will start it. Because if the US does not get the amount of army that she have, because that is what she came out of a policy to say, the selected service, if you don't apply, it will be a felony. To put fear into do it. So if they say they don't meet that demand of what they need to have, they will also go to the African continent to recruit. Because they have to meet the demand. Now, that have been said, right? I'm going to bring a video of a black British soldier and what he said in that video. Like I said, we are here to give you the information. If you want to go, it's up to you. You can go. But no matter what you do, you are a slave. And what I'm about to show you, that's what you're going to see. No matter what you do, you are a slave to go join them. You are 3/5 of a lesser human being to go and join them. You are animals to go and join them. Even their dog are better than you. They are dog, D-O-G, dog, are better than you. You are just like a spittle, like the bubble that comes from your mouth. You don't pick on that bubble. It get dry. The moment I go, it get dry. That's how you are, like a spittle. You can't pick it. When that bubble comes from your mouth, it's a bubble, it's gone. It get dry even in the air before it touch the floor or the object. That's how you are in the eyes of these people. They do not care you providing services for them. And by the way, do you see the riot that went on or that been going on in UK? All of a sudden, then you see UK politician. There's a human right. We need to protect immigrants. We need to protect black. Since when have the UK protect black people? Some of these things might even be a plan so that they can go recruit you. So that you will feel that, oh, yeah, they are fighting for black people. They are fighting for immigrants. Since when have they fight for immigrants? But now all of a sudden, you hear a British politician lawyer because they do not have the army. You think white folks going to die in World War 3? That is about to happen? You get it wrong. White folks will not die. They will not send their children. They won't. Because what is about to happen, they know it. So they are coming for you, punk, carry you to go and fight. And die. Why they're not going to send their children? They are not. They won't. They will not.
The British Army has admitted that a black soldier.
This is just one of the many videos that are out there. This is just one of the many victims, African victims that are out there. This is just one. So what am I going to do here? I'm going to allow the video to play entirely. Then before I can come in to make my, because I want you to see it.
Soldier who fronted. The British Army has admitted that a black soldier who fronted several recruitment campaigns had to work in an unacceptable environment where she experienced sexist and racist harassment. As well as apologising, the Army has paid the soldier a substantial financial sum. Kerry Ann Knight, who left the Army this year, has been talking for the first time to our defence correspondent, Jonathan Beale.
Yeah. This is just, that's the section I was in. Yeah, you spot me?
I can spot you.
Yeah.
Kerry Ann Knight always knew she'd stand out in an army struggling to recruit both women and ethnic minorities.
Were you the only black person in
Yeah, I was the only a black female.
But she joined full of hope, assuming racism had long been stamped out.
For some reason, I thought someone in uniform was going to be professional, and I was very excited to be a part of that and just creating my own family within the army.
Kerry Ann became a face for army recruitment. She knew why the army wanted to appeal to the groups she represented. But she also became a target for abuse.
I was extremely shocked because I really didn't experience such deep levels of racism. Yeah, I had to learn the hard way in the army.
It got worse when she became an instructor at Harrogate. It's where the army trains junior soldiers from the age of 16. It's controversial, not least because in the past there have been allegations of bullying. Kerry Ann says she witnessed it, but she too suffered at the hands of her fellow white male instructors.
They'd pile everything daily on my desk, so just to show me that I'm not welcomed. And I remember one day they took a photo of me just standing at that desk, looking slightly broken, just having to sort out that rubbish before I can use my desk. They'd have Django Unchained playing. They would repeat the most, say, racist lines, and then they'd chuckle. They spoke outright in the office about lynching me, simply because I'd put in a complaint. And it was suggested for me to be tar and feathered.
Rather than root out the racism, she says the army closed ranks to protect the organisation.
When they tried to paint out as if I was a aggressive black woman, that was extremely tough. If it wasn't for those individuals who supported me, whether secretly or publicly, yeah, I would have been broken.
Earlier this year, she took her case to an employment tribunal. The army contested it, but as the evidence mounted, it issued an apology. It accepted Mrs. Knight had to work in an environment where she experienced racist and sexist harassment. It admitted the army failed her. In a separate statement, the MOD said it had settled the claim with no admission of liability.
I would never encourage a woman, especially of colour, to join the army, because it's not going to benefit your life in the long run.
Where she experienced
Now, that's the video you just saw, or you just watched, or you heard. There was key words used in this video. Let's see some of those key words. And one area they said they were going to lynch her. Lynch. Let's be real here. If this lady is fighting for England, if this lady is fighting for her land, her state, her nation, is defending, why should they lynch her? Why did they remind her of slavery? Why was she reminded of slavery? Lynch. Because when we talk about lynching, so many companies of lynching, there were so many. Lynching was also done in a manner in which it was brutal to subjugate your mind, to subjugate you that you are nothing, you are not human being, and put you in a confined space, lynching. So in reality, she was actually lynched mentally. Mentally, she was lynched just because she was a black woman. Just because she was a black person. So mentally, she was lynched. Now, not just in the military, but the fact that you saw her decks, the way they powder her decks with stuff, her decks that she can use when she go to work. Now, in their mind, what is this Negro? What is this slave doing out here on a desk in an office? She's supposed to be on a field, on a county plantation. She's supposed to be on a battlefield. Their children will not go on a battlefield. That was when they said, we will lynch you. They want to put stuff on her decks. Because that's not where she's supposed to be. As a slave, she's supposed to be on a plantation, fighting the enemies for the white man, for the colonizer, for the oppressor. Why is she doing the office? So who is going to go on a plantation to fight World War 3? Who will do that? You sitting in the office, we're supposed to sit here. The children of the colonizer, the children of the oppressor, the descendant of the oppressor, supposed to be in the office. Not you sitting in the office here. They will not send their children. And no one again you saw that it got so mad. I mean, these are kids. You heard a 17, 18. She was training them. They did not like it. These are not even older people. So that means even the people you call kids, they are trained in a home by their children to disrespect black. They are trained with the racist behavior. These are teenagers, 17, 18, that she was training them. In their mind, even the old folks that was there, also who were part of the training, who were training them, in their mind, this lady is not supposed to be here. We are the ones supposed to be here. This is our job. She's supposed to be on a plantation. She's supposed to be on a battlefield, not here training. Why would she get this position? We are the ones to get this position. Set home. Why they go fight the war? Did you see? So psychologically, she was lynched. They lynched her by reminding her, we will enslave you. We will lynch you. You have no right here. Just because you are in a British army, you have no right. You are not a citizen. Those of you that are going to apply, like I said, I can't stop you. I can't stop you. But I'm just reminding you, those of you that are going to apply online in Africa, just know what is ahead of you. Because instead of you going on a plantation to fight, you will also be fighting another psychological war. So by the time you get to the battlefield, you'll be mentally deranged, and that's how your enemy will overcome you. That's how your enemy will capture you. And most of you will be prisoners of war, and you'll be ill-treated. I don't think you want to be prisoners of war. I'm only telling you, don't try it. Don't apply. Because the people to whom you are going to protect, the land, the nation to whom you are going to protect, mentally, they are going to deal with you. By the time you get to the battlefield, your enemy will capture you as prisoner of war. Did you see what they did to your sister in that video? And at the end, what did she say? I will advise no black woman should join the British military. You saw her tearing, crying with tears. For me, I want her to be strong. Don't cry. Because that is what they want to see. They want to see the black man tear. That's how they feel happy. That's how they feel great. They feel superior. That's the only part they don't like. For tears to come. They want to feel superior. But you heard her. I will never ever encourage any black person or black female to join the British military. And not just the black female. That also go to you so-called Negro. As long you are a Negro, if they can do this to a woman, if you can do this to a queen, what about you? Once a Negro is still a Negro in the eyes of these people. Once a slave, you are a slave in the eyes of these people. They don't care whether you are a female or not. But the only reason why she say, I will advise no black female should join the British military, because she's speaking from a female perspective. Because it happened to a female. But it go all across the land. It go across the board. You are not different from her. When they told her, we will lynch you. Was that only female they lynch during slavery? During colonization? Was it only female they lynch? They lynch black, both men and women. They lynched them. They castrated them. They bone break them. They humiliated them. So don't try it. That's not a nation you need to fight for. That's not a freedom you need to fight for. That's not a land you need to fight for. That's not why your blood is supposed to be wasted. I understand the lack of leadership on the African continent, but I prefer you stay there. I understand the hardship in Africa, but I prefer you stay there. If only your aim and objective is to come and join the British Army or the Western Army or the colonizer, I urge you or advise you just stay. If not for any other reason, now I'm not saying don't travel. But if not for any other reason, I will advise you, sit down there. Stay there. The African continent, we are almost there. We are almost there to be victorious. We are almost there. Don't get to the finish line. Almost just a step in your faith. Do not put your name on an application. Don't do it. Now watch a video here, and then I will continue.
Videos, so many testimonies coming out of the UK from Black people, from Asians, from Arabs, and so on, all British citizens, as well as from immigrants, of course. But so many people expressing like trauma and shock, disappointment, grief over these riots and these attacks. Frankly, I don't know why. I mean, I don't know how you could have ever convinced yourself that you're living in a healthy, civilized society to where any of this should shock you. Look, these English people have felt like their Englishness was being deteriorated. You know, their English culture, their English heritage, their English Anglo so-called civilization, they felt it was being marginalized, minimized, and undermined by the presence of non-whites and primarily of Muslims, the presence of Muslims. So what you're seeing with these riots is just them reasserting their culture, their heritage, their so-called civilization at its most raw, its most honest, the most primal expression, which is hateful, primitive, and violent. That's their culture. That's their culture, and they're telling you loud and clear. Why, these are festivals for them. You call it riots, but for them, these are festivals of Anglo-British culture and tradition. That's who they are. They're not tolerant people. They're not multiculturalists. They're monoculturalists, and they always have been. I mean, you can tie a monkey's tail to a stick to make it go straight, but the moment that stick comes loose, the tail will curl up again. You can't artificially change a society. No, you can't artificially change the nature of a society. And you should already know. You should already know the nature of that society, since it was almost exclusively because of the violent, tyrannical, supremacist nature of that society that the countries that your parents came from, your grandparents came from, and so on, that's why their countries became so unlivable that they had to immigrate to that miserable island to begin with. I mean, how did you think that people who were brutal colonizers and enslavers in your country were somehow completely different when they got home? I mean, don't you know that the highest domestic violence statistics are in the homes of police officers? No, no one is savage on the job, but gentle at home. They were in your countries, robbing your countries, pillaging your countries, destroying your countries, because they thought you deserved it. And they look at you the same way now. They look at you on the streets of London, on the streets of Brighton, on the streets of Manchester, Bristol, Liverpool, and Cardiff. They look at you the same way that they looked at you when you were on indigo plantations and when they were starving you to death in Bengal. They look at you the same way that they looked at you when you were on tobacco and sugar and cotton plantations in the Caribbean. The same way that they looked at you when they were stealing your lands in Kenya, stealing your lands in Zimbabwe and everywhere else, and forcing you into mines and forcing you onto plantations to deliver all of your natural wealth into their hands. I'm telling you, they look at you the same way now. When you're on their streets, they look at you the same way as they looked at you when you were in your countries of origin. They hunted you over there, and they'll hunt you over here. In fact, they'll hunt you even more savagely when they're on their home turf. I mean, do you think that a wolf is more dangerous when he's outside and less dangerous when you're right there in his den? Well, everybody knows that a wolf is even more violent when he thinks he's protecting his den than when he's out hunting. So I don't see why you're surprised. I don't see why you're shocked. I mean, it would be different if your history with them was different. You know, if they had come into your countries, if they had come into your lands as traders and as merchants and just did business with you in a respectable, civilized way, but that's not what they did, is it? So, I mean, if you're the victim of a brutal home invasion where you get assaulted and robbed in your own house, what makes you think that the criminal who did that to you is going to welcome you as a guest when you show up at his door? So yes, they felt that their culture was getting pushed aside. And now they're holding parades all across the UK to celebrate who they are and to remind you who they are and to remind everyone else who they are. And listen, I'm well aware that this is orchestrated, that it is calculated. I'm well aware that what's happening in the UK right now is all part of the destabilization project that has been in progress for at least as long as the Ukraine war has been in progress. I'm the first person to point that out. I'm the first person to talk about that. I know that's what's happening because I said it would happen. And it's going to get worse. I know that Tommy Robinson is on the payroll. I know he's an agent of disruption, but he's not the only one. I know that's why they specifically choose to hold their Anglo Pride parades in heavily immigrant and minority areas, precisely to inflame. And precisely so that English people can see the police crack down on white nationalists. That's just to promote the white nationalist narrative. You know, if immigrant and so-called minority offenders get lighter sentences than whites, the whole point of that is just to advance that narrative, to stoke resentment and racial hatred. Everyone knows that Tommy Robinson is paid by higher-ups. Well, those higher-ups are exactly that. This racial and ethnic strife is sought by the elites of the society. Because like I said, time and time again, Europe, including the UK, is slated to be nothing but a conflict zone. But the point is, they're able to do this because that racism, that white supremacy, that brutal, violent heritage and culture is their heritage and culture. And they never rehabilitated themselves from it. They never civilized from it. They have been barbarians for millennia. And that's what they are today. To one extent or another, all they did was medicate those hateful, violent tendencies. They sedated it. They treated the symptoms, just like the pharmaceutical industry does, just like they do with illness. You know, they never cure you. They just medicate the symptoms so that it'll be dormant without ever actually treating the underlying condition. Well, that's the same way that they've dealt with their perverse hatred and their racism and their penchant for violence. They just put a Band-Aid on a tumor. They plaster over a cyst with foundation, makeup, and blush so that you can't see it. Or anyway, so that you can't tell whether what you are seeing is what you think you're seeing. You know how they talk about microaggressions and implicit bias and all that? Well, that's what I'm talking about. It's like radiation that escapes through a landfill of toxic waste because you never actually got rid of the waste. You just tried to bury it. But no matter how deep you bury it, it's still there. And it's going to come out one way or another. Look, I'm a Westerner. My ancestors were Irish and German. But I don't feel any conflict in acknowledging the reality that the West has always been and still is barbaric. You know, there was a Sahabi named Abu Dhar al-Ghifari, and his whole tribe, before Islam, they were highway robbers. They were bandits, thieves, murderers, and they were renowned for that. When they embraced Islam, they didn't pretend that they didn't have that history. In fact, having that history just demonstrated how much Islam changed them. They were no more defined by what they were before Islam, nor did they identify or defend what they were before Islam any more than I am defined by or identify with or defend the history of the West. You have to tell the truth. I mean, the irony, of course, is that these riots, this is all part of a destabilization campaign by white Westerners against white Western countries. And these people still want to believe in some kind of white Western fraternity. Your forefathers were Anglo serfs and peasants used and abused by Anglo aristocrats. And that's basically the same situation now. You are defending a so-called culture, a so-called civilization that treated your ancestors like animals, treated your women like property, and your children as nothing but expendable drones for workhouses and mines. You enslaved each other before you ever started enslaving anyone else. It's a miserable, disgraceful, inhuman heritage. I mean, I'm American, and there only are Americans because white Europeans were so vicious and so tyrannical to each other that whoever could escape ran away. My people went to America because you were starving them in the potato famine, white on white oppression. That's your whole history before you became multicultural oppressors. That's what I mean. What you did elsewhere, you were already doing at home. What you did to other people, you were first doing to each other. You know, when the colonizers first went to Ghana, they were flabbergasted to discover that every house, every home had a toilet that was cleaned every day. Meanwhile, you still had your people defecating in public in collective cesspits that never got cleaned. Yes, you never cleaned them. You just buried it and dug a new one. See how you do? That's a habit with you. Just bury it and then start somewhere else. That's basically the origin of America, if you think about it. You just moved away from the cesspit of Europe to start a new cesspit on the other side of the Atlantic. I'm telling you because you need to know. I'm not telling you to denigrate you. I mean, how are you going to be uplifted if you don't know how low you are now and how low you've always been? Westerners don't know the difference between standing on the shore and drowning, because wallahi, you are drowning and you're being drowned, actually. Your own so-called culture, your own so-called civilization is drowning you. And you're out here in the streets of the UK defending the culture that's drowning you and that drowned your forefathers. Well, you don't know how much in common you actually have with the immigrants that flee to your country from their countries because your country ruined their countries. Because the same so-called civilization that ruined their countries has been ruining you for hundreds of years. You need to wash the makeup off of that cyst, rip the Band-Aid off of that tumor, and start actually trying to heal yourselves. And you need to charge the doctor who never did anything but cover up your sickness, cover up your deformity, cover up your mutation instead of treating it, because he never cared about your health in the first place. And you need to charge that doctor, which is your so-called civilization. You need to charge that doctor with malpractice. Charge your civilization, so-called, with malpractice. I'm saying you need to direct your anger at the people who are trying to direct your anger at anyone but themselves, because they're the ones you should be mad at. You should direct your anger at all these people who are lying to you about your so-called civilization, telling you to be proud and defensive about a culture that has done nothing but keep you perverted, hateful, violent, and criminal for centuries, because you have a right to be worthwhile human beings. And your so-called civilization has let you down. It's let you down badly. It hasn't just let you down developmentally, morally, spiritually, ethically, and so on. It's even let you down in the most practical of terms. You know, the very thing that you like to think that you excel in. You like to think that you're the most practical and efficient people on the earth, but look at your system. Your so-called civilization built a system, built a society that's literally making you go extinct. Your materialism, your atheism, your consumerism, your urbanization, your worship of money has created a society that cannot even perpetuate itself anymore. How practical is that? I'm telling you, you're out of your minds. Nothing about the way that you approach the world, nothing about the way you approach life makes any sense. It's killing you. And you're so insane that you're singing God Save the King instead of saving yourselves.
All right. So he said he might have said it better than even I can do. Okay. We have said it here time with our numbers that if Africa ever think that the same people that colonized her, enslaved her, oppressed her for centuries, right, kill her democratic leader, so-called democratic leader, directly or indirectly, if she think these are the same people she's still going to take advice, to ally with them for betterment of Africa, it's not going to happen. Because the reason for which they colonize you, they enslave you, all right, the reason for which they never work with leaders that always have the mindset of making Africa independent, the reason for which they never work with them, they will never work with you. If they never work with Nkrumah, they never work with Gaddafi, they never work with Mohammed, how they call it now, Mohammed Gaddafi, Mohammed Gaddafi. But the reason to which they never work with Mugabe, because imagine, Mugabe was once their friends. Robert Mugabe of Zimbabwe was once their friends. In fact, he was once the Queen of England. In fact, Robert Mugabe ate with the Queen of England, the so-called Queen. All right? Friends, they rode together. But the moment Robert Mugabe began to direct his attention to his people, for his nation, for the interest of Zimbabwe, they hated him. They hated him. They hated him with all costs. And they make him look bad to the world. And in fact, not to the world, but they make him look bad to his people. Again, for the lack of knowledge, my people perish. Because if my people have knowledge about the reality, if I come here to educate my people, and the people to whom I'm exposing go to my people and talk ill of me and say Frank is divisive, Frank is not bringing the world together, Frank is creating more enemies. If my people are knowledgeable of what I'm saying, my people will not go against me. My people will rather go against them. My people will rather support me and defend me. For lack of knowledge, my people perish. And that's how Robert Mugabe was hated even by most of his people. Now, they became aware of the reality when Robert Mugabe died. That's the time some of them became aware that, but well, US, you say you have sanctions on Zimbabwe, but why it is Europe, England, you say you have sanctions on Zimbabwe because Robert Mugabe was a dictator. He wants to stay in power. Why now Robert Mugabe is dead and gone? Why US, UK, why do you still have sanctions on Zimbabwe? Why do you still have chain on Zimbabwe? Well, Robert Mugabe is dead and gone. You say he was a dictator, it was because of him, but he's gone. Why? Because at that time, our people did not understand. They lack knowledge. They did not understand what Mugabe was fighting for was in their interest. Robert Mugabe wanted to get the land back to the rightful owner. Did not understand. They went against Mugabe. That's why sometimes in a revolution, things change based on what you see coming. Approach change based on what you see coming. Maybe the only thing I would say that Robert Mugabe should have done, as we see with Abraham Traore, communication. Robert Mugabe did not communicate properly to his people. Maybe I'll put that way. Do you see Abraham Traore? Do you see the Sahel nation or the AES nation? Do you see how they are communicating with their people? Every time they're having press conference, every time, in fact, they're having stadium where the people will go and they bring their people. Because in a revolution, you have to be direct with your people. Now, I'm not saying there won't be a betrayal, because even with what is happening with Abraham Traore, being transparent, there are still betrayal. Recently, people who try to infiltrate, to betray him, his own people, for the West, they were caught. There will still be betrayal no matter how you be transparent. But yet them be transparent. And then the betrayer will be caught. No matter what it is, the betrayer will be caught. Because you only have few. That's the only mistake I think Robert Mugabe did. He did not communicate well to his people. But the point here is, England will always be England, and US will always be US. There will never be African people interest. We always say this. Nations that took part in the colonization of Africa, nations that took part in the enslavement of Africa, that's how these people get an empire. Do you think they want for the empire to fail? No way. All these nations will not be for Africa. Because it was through the demise of Africa, they became an empire. It was through the demise of Africa, they became superpower. It was through the demise of African, they became world best. Through the exploitation of African, they became world best. They built an empire. It was through going against revolutionary leaders, democratic leaders who care for their people. It was through going against those people and making sure those people are being assassinated before their empire reign. So what do you expect? Any change? You'll be delusional to think you will come and sit Nana Akufo-Addo. You'll be hallucinating thinking that you will work with US to go change Africa. You will work with Europe to go change Africa. Now, let me talk about this before we leave. We're already done. But let me talk about this. I tried to find because I didn't want to come out here without information. So I'm not going to say it is true. Okay, even though I might believe it is true, but because I don't have actual evidence, I can't say it is true. I will say allege. All right. I can't say it is true because I do not have actual evidence to present, like how we normally do it. However, over the course of the week, I got news that the Guinean president, Mamadi Abuya or Bayai, he jailed his wife, his French wife, his white wife, for 5 years. Why? Because of corruption and serving as a secret intelligence for France. Folks, if you can notice, it came a time Emmanuel Macron was so involved in Africa, all right, sending honor cover whatsoever. But it came a time he just slowed down. It came a time Emmanuel Macron slowed down. He slowed down because he had someone on the African continent who was working for him. He had a relative of him who was a first lady in an African nation. And this person, his cousin. This person, his cousin, who was the first lady in Guinea, the wife to Mamadi Bouya. And you see, that is why Abraham Touare fall back with Mamadi Bouya. Because you cannot be fighting the colonialist, and then you have a colonialist wife. Wife. And you know, these people, no matter how it is, they will never go against their interest, even if their interest is harmful. As long as they know what they are fighting for is to preserve certain things of theirs, they don't care. So that is why it came a time, at first, Mamadi Bouya was working with Abraham Touare. But then later, they blacklisted him. That showed that Abraham Touare, he's a revolutionary. He's up for something. He's up for truth. Because he did not trust this French woman being a first lady in an African nation, especially a nation that is to fight on a revolutionary basis, a nation that is fighting against France, influence on the African continent. And then you have a president who his cousin is the first lady. How can that be? So she was charged, or let's say she was in prison as alleged, because what happened here is, I went on the internet, I tried to find it, did everything that I could, tapped every word that I could. It did not come up. The only thing that I saw people reporting on it, and it was African, not even European, because these kind of things, you will not see it. Not even European media. I saw report on it from African platforms, Twitter, YouTube, but I did not even see it like on the internet. If you try to find it, it will bring you right back to YouTube, and it will be African reporting on it. It will bring you right back to Twitter. It will be African reporting on it. I did not see it on the internet to be published. So he jailed her for 5 years. But the point here is, what was he thinking? What was he thinking? How are you going to fight against these people? And at the same time, you have their sister as their wife, as your wife. How will I be fighting against you? Then I have your sister as my wife. Really? You know, he's regretting right now. I know Mamadi Buya is regretting right now that his brother have to leave him down the line. And they don't trust him to go to the AES now. So all he have to do now, and that's what he's doing. He's with ECOWAS. There's useless organization. He's with ECOWAS. So now he have to go to the ECOWAS nation. There's useless, meaningless organization called ECOWAS. That's where he is now. He can't go to the AES. They don't trust him. Absolutely not. And they will never trust him. And I know Abraham Traore will not trust him. I will never blame Abraham Traore. Because at this point of the African freedom, we don't need anybody to waste our time. At this point of the African freedom, at this point of African taking what belongs to them, we don't want to waste time. We don't need anything that will pull us back. So let him go to this useless, meaningless ECOWAS and sit there. Let's watch just 1 minute video and then we'll close. Hopefully it's this. Okay, it's not this. Let me take this out. Let's watch this chief from Ghana giving a historical analysis about African leaders who think they can work with the West, who think by working with the West, it means globalization, it means coming together, working together. Let's watch this and see. It's just a 1 minute or so, not even 1 minute.
Over else in East Africa, learning their history. And the British could not defeat the Nandi. And so what did they do? They invited them for a discussion. It was, please, come with 5 people, unarmed. We also bring in 5 people, unarmed. You know what the British did? They flooded the place with their soldiers. They hid them. The African trusted the British for his word because we are Africans. Your word is your honor. As soon as the 5 got there and they were greeting, the head of the guy, what's his name? Colonel Minor Hagdnos, the British colonel, just brought out a gun and shot the head of the Nandi chiefs. Yes, brought it and shot him. And these people are your friends? You don't know what colonialism is about. You learn from these people, you don't know what colonialism is about. There is Nehanda in East Africa, a Shona woman, spirit woman. And it got to a point they realized that what Rhodes was doing to them in Zimbabwe was wrong. So this woman led a fight. After resisting, they got her. You know what they did? They hanged her. But he said words that I'll never forget. He says, you can kill me, but I'm pregnant. So the day you kill me, you hang me, more of me will be born. Are you Nehanda's children? Are you the grandchildren of Nehanda? So this is the challenge. I could go on and on with these kind of stories, you know, but the academy is a very weighty place. And in fact, look at Prempeh. The day I read Prempeh's story as an African, I had tears in my eyes. How do you treat somebody like this? The promises you give, you won't burn Asante, Prempeh is going to surrender. He finished, and all that you did was to march him away. In whose interest? When you interrogate the stories, the saddest part is that Prempeh came back with his name changed to the son of Queen Victoria, called Edward. You can imagine what they had done to his mind to pick up the head of the person who what brought his face to the ground, and to pick up the child, the name of his child. You are Africans. Go and interrogate yourselves. Your history is your power, and you have to learn the history of colonialism very well. Nobody came here to do your ancestors good. And unfortunately, I haven't used their language to talk. Recently, I had the privilege of pointing out to some young people that Africa's vital natural resources are not the presumed minerals generated from the bowels of the continent. The most precious resource is the African's head. Who and what controls it, and how is it used? Is the African's head authentically African? There's an Ndebele author, Mokokoma Okonwana, and he made a statement. He wrote something. He says, if we had to earn our age by thinking for ourselves at least once a year, only a handful of people would reach adulthood. Because the Greek establishment's awareness of the power of thinking, they killed Socrates. I remember that I was in East Africa, learning their history, and the British could not defeat the Nandi.
All right. So I'm not going to add to his wow, just leave it just like that, what he said. Okay? If you understand colonization, that means you know your history. And if you know your history, that means you know who to work with and you know who not to work with. If you know your history, that means the colonizer, the enslaver, the oppressor, they have no intention of doing any good for Africa. Now, you know what baffles me is this. I'm going to answer your question, Blum. What baffles me is this. You know, this current generation of the descendant of the oppressor, of the enslaver, right? Or the descendant of the one who enslaved Africans, right? They will be the one to say, I didn't do it. I did not enslave you. I did not colonize you. I didn't take part in the, I was not even alive at that time. Yes, of course, you are not alive. But you know what? You are maintaining what your father did. You are maintaining what your mother did. In fact, you are worse than them. So to come and say, I didn't do it, well, we can just move on. It was I did not enslave you. I wasn't there. I did not colonize you. I wasn't there. But the legacy your parent, your father, mother left, you are doing the same thing. Your mother, your father did not kill Muammar Gaddafi. You killed Muammar Gaddafi. And the reason to whom you killed Muammar Gaddafi, it was the same reason to whom your father killed Thomas Sankara. It was the same reason to whom your father killed Patrick Lumumba. The same reason today, your generation, that you are saying, oh, my generation did not do this. But your generation, the same reason for which you are going against Abraham Traoré, that today about 90 assassination attempts on Abraham Traoré. It was the same thing your father did to Kwame Nkrumah, to remove Kwame Nkrumah. 5 assassination attempts, even more than that, to remove him, because what Kwame Nkrumah stood for is what Abraham Traoré stands for today. So how can you tell me it was your father, that your grandparent did it, you didn't do it, but you are doing the same thing? So let me hear something and get off my ear. Oh, my parent did it. Oh, my great-great-great-grandfather did it. I was not even born. You was not even born. How can you blame me for what they did? No, we blame you because you are still doing the same thing. Your father, mother saw us as 3/5 of a lesser human being. And today, you see us as 3/5 of a lesser human being. How can you come to tell me, oh, I did not call you 3/5 of a lesser human being? It was my father. But you are doing the same thing. So let we hear something. We don't really care about you. That's the bottom line. And we don't want to work with you. That's the bottom line. We will never work with you. That's the bottom line. So, folks, thank you for tuning in today, for hanging in. That's where we stop today. That's what I have to present. That's what I have for you. We will keep exposing. Those who want to follow can follow, and those who want to go to the other side, they can go to the other side. But that's what I have today. The British recruiting army in ECOWAS nations to prepare for World War III. And that means the recolonization of the African continent. That means the re-population of the African continent, because imagine when they were taking Africans from Africa, what they did, they depopulate the African continent. So that is what about to happen again. Depopulation, or how they call it, that's what coming. Okay, they're going to depopulate the African continent to build a military to fight for World War III. They are World War III. Why Africa go unpopulated? And then when time comes to Africa to fight for herself, just how they did it during enslavement time, Africa could not defend herself, fight for herself. That's what's going to happen again. And after you have done fighting for them, then they come to the African continent and recolonize. Because that's what happened. After they stole you, after they took you to the so-called unknown land, you build their land, their wealth, then what happened? They came back and colonized the African continent. That's the same thing going to happen if we are not careful and mindful. They're going to take our population again. After you finish fighting a war and they win, if they win, and then they come right back and recolonize you. Because by that time, you will have no manpower. And sit again. All these are happening because of our bad, ugly, stupid, motley brain African leaders. Some we have. Everyone are preparing for the task ahead. Everyone are preparing for this war. And look, it's something that's going to happen. It is going to happen. It is going to, in fact, it is happening right now. The only thing they have not yet gotten to that skills, to that peak, where it will just poof. But the World War III is actually happening right now. It's going on. But what's happening behind the scene is nations are still preparing. They are preparing. Okay, this is our weakness. We need to straighten out this place. It's going on. It's happening. You think it is Ukraine that is fighting Russia? We reported here already. Couple of the United States armies are already in Ukraine. Couple of the UK army are in Ukraine. NATO, they are there fighting. So what they are doing is all preparation. Okay, here we are weak here. I think we need to straighten out this place. That is what they're doing right now. That's why you see they have not just gone with force. It's all preparation. Okay, we need to straighten out this place. Okay, you think we need this army. We need to how they call it, upgrade our military equipment. So right now it's all testing that is going on. It's testing. It's testing time going on. All right, we have used this tank. It did not work. The Russian deflected or the Russian destroyed it. So, okay, what can we do? Okay, we need to build, new tank. We need to build new one. That is what's going on. They are preparing. It is test. They are testing. So it's going to happen. So don't sit here and say, oh, if it's not even about if. It's not about the matter of if. It's already happening and it's going to happen. It's just a matter of when is it going to reach to the peak? When are they going to be done with that drill? Because they are drilling. It's drilling time. They are drilling for this war. It's preparation time. That's what they are doing. And all nations are preparing, are allying, are finding place to ally. It is only the African continent that is not allying. And they are setting their stupid and dumb think that this thing is going to be between, it's going to be European conflict. Thinking that it's going to be just European war. You will be delusional to think that this is going to be. First of all, the reason why it's because of the same Africa. But they want to make it look like, did you know that 2 weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, Vladimir Putin and Zelensky went and sat down on peace agreement? While they were in that meeting, they went and entered Russia. While they were in a meeting. That's the same thing they did to Japan. While they went and sat down in meeting, having meeting and stuff, boom, they went behind Japan. Boom. That's what they did to Putin. While they were in meeting, Putin was trying to do agreement for peace, ceasefire. While they were in that meeting, they entered Russia. They struck part of the plane and start jubilating. Do you think Putin going to sit down again with them to make peace? Since this thing started, Putin have always been willing and calling for peace. And that was the last chance for Zelensky. Why did NATO pass behind Putin win and enter? So it is not a matter of if. World War 3 is on. These people are preparing, they are testing. The moment they get the number of military they want, it's done. That's all they want. That's why you see recruitment going on like this. These people are testing. To the extent that they have to go to the African continent to recruit now. I don't want to go into that. We already spoke about it. The videos is there. Maybe after the recording, those of you that are coming, you can go and watch it later. But these folks are desperate. They are not going to go down. So it's not a matter of if. No. World War 3 is ongoing right now. It's all preparation. They are preparing. It is the African continent who are sitting out muted and doing nothing. But the reality here is the war that is coming is actually because of Africa. It is not because of Russia. They are trying to defeat Russia because of Africa. They don't want for Russia to have that influence there. They don't want for China to have that influence. They are angry with Russia and China because the policy of the US, the policy of Europe in Africa is toxic. It's not good. And those nation policy is different from them. That's the reason they are angry. And we reported on it before here. They said the approach China is taking in Africa, is bad, it's not a right approach. And that's their concern. That's their focus. It's the wrong approach. Do not empower these Africans. We depend on their pocket. We depend on their resources. We depend on their pot to feed ourselves. How are you going to empower them to make them think that the pot that they got, it is important because that's where our food are? It's just like what Frederick Douglass said. When his slave, a master wife used to teach him their son lesson. And the slave master came one time and told the wife, do not teach the Negro boy. When you teach the Negro boy and he become educated, and then he know that what we are doing to him is against humanity, he will go against us. Do not educate him. He will become aware of things that we are doing is not right. the reason they're going against China and Russia. It's not because China is doing the wrong thing, or China doing why China or because democracy, or China not doing democracy, this, that. Nothing. It's just because China is not following the model of the West. Russia is not following the model of the West because they know the history of Russia with Africa. These are the two nations that fought alongside with Africans to get independent today, Sonshim independent. And that's the reality. It's the truth, it's the better truth. And anything that people don't want to hear, it is actually the truth. And what people want to hear, it is not the truth. And that's the harsh reality. So if you said in Africa that you African leaders and thinking that this war is going to be European war, you get it wrong. You get it wrong. This is not European war. This is actually the true World War III. The World War I, World War II was European conflict, was European tribal war, was European misunderstanding or disagreement, whatsoever you call it. But this that is coming, it is not World War III. It's actually World War I, because that's the true war. I mean, war you are going to see. That's what I got to present today. So if you are on the African continent as leader, ECOWAS, AU, keep sleeping, keep dreaming. Don't prepare the African continent. Don't get together. Don't invest in the youth to protect that continent. Allow the youth to leave, to go out, to go and fight for different people instead of their continent. Do you know the reason why our forefathers continue to bless this continent with population, no matter what it is? Do you know the reason our forefathers continue to fertilize our nation in every capacity? Do you know the reason? Sit down, watch. Be going to the enemies. Be going to them. What is about to come? Because even Europe will not be safe for you. Nowhere will be safe for you. The only place could be the African continent. But again, it will not be safe for you because your people are already angry with you. I mean, hopefully you shouldn't even go to the AES nation because those nations are preparing. Those nations are building their army. They are training. So maybe there were you so-called Negro, stupid, dumb-headed African leader will go to seek refuge. Because you will not come to the US, you will not go to Europe, it will not be a safe haven for you. So sit and watch what is coming, and you think it is fun. At the end of the day, it's about the African continent. Because those two nations are opening the eyes of Africans. In fact, the reality here is the progress that Africans have made, whether technology war or so, right? Economy war or so, it is actually based on the leadership, the partnership of China and Russia. Let me be frank here and start sugarcoating anything here. Based on the level of time the US have been in Africa, based on the level of time Europe have been in Africa, and based on the level of time China have been in Africa, based on the level of time Russia have had influence in Africa. Let us judge here and based on those time period and see who should be the one to have more impact on the African continent. If Europe are doing the right thing, no one will be going to sit there and be talking about China and Russia. If America did the right thing, no one was going to be sitting here talking about Europe and Russia. It was not, I mean, Europe and China. Or let's say China and Russia. It was not China and Russia who went and killed Gaddafi. It was not China and Russia who went and killed Patrick Lumumba, Thomas Sankara, Amilcar Cabral. It was not China and Russia who fought hard to remove Nkrumah or to kill him. It is not China and Russia who been fighting proxy war. These are your development in Africa. These are your development. These are your impact in Africa. So why do you want to hold African to say, oh, African taking our bases? African don't. First of all, ask yourself, why are African requesting for your bases to leave? When your bases been there. I mean, let's be realistic here. If to say your bases were not there, and then you come here and say, okay, or we want to have US bases here. They have not been there. Maybe if we say then you can look at it, but you can have other bases there. Why we request and you say no? But you have your so-called base there, they're not fighting for the interests of Africa. In fact, these are the same people funding the terrorists. Yeah, you did it to Gaddafi. You funded the insurgency, the Arab Spring, and you killed Gaddafi. These are evidence. And you yourself came out and said it. You yourself came out and said you funded the Arab Spring. And not only that, you got in plane. You got in plane and from here with your army, your military, and went and bombed Libya. You. Those are your attitude. Those are the things you've been doing. Even if Gaddafi were doing the wrong thing, let's just hypothetically, if Gaddafi were doing the right thing, is that a way to go negotiate? Then why can't you go and bomb Pombia? What Pombia been in power almost 50 years now, going to 50 years? Why can't you go bomb him? Why can't you go kill him? Who have done nothing for the Cameroonian? Why can't you go bomb him? Oh, Togo, Farouk, why can't you go get in plane and go bomb him? I mean, let's be real here. And these are the things that Africans have come to realize. I know. I don't think the United States is a good partner. I don't think Europe, the Europeans, are a good partner. So when we say it, we the bad people. When we say it, then we don't like you. We are just speaking the obvious. So if we come to speak the obvious, that does not entail dislike. Anyway, folks, thank you all for tuning in. Share, like, subscribe. I will see you all Saturday. Hopefully, I'm hoping that Nkema will be on. He'll be ready. And then I will also see you hopefully Sunday by the grace of our ancestral spirit. Uhuru.